Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are, whoever you are. Welcome once again to No Nerd Caliber. That is KNOW, as in we want you to know Nerd Caliber, as opposed to no Nerd Caliber. Stop doing that. I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor in chief of Nerd Caliber, first person shooter on Facebook, and Burley underscore adopter on Twitter. Joining me tonight to talk about our top 3+ favorite 1980s cartoon series. I had to say that to make absolutely sure that these were series that were in the 1980s, and or the 1980s versions of them, and they were cartoon series, not movies. And Greg helped me pin that down. Since I just mentioned your name, Greg, why don't you start with the self-introductions? Greg, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. It's been a couple weeks since I've been able to join the fun of Nerd Caliber live. Looking forward to tonight's topic. This was an interesting challenge. I'll readily admit to being a little more deep in the sort of the 70s Hanna-Barbera camp. More so than the 80s stuff, Rodney being my doppelganger makes perfect sense. But hi, everybody. Greg Snyder, Wonder Llama Photography, Wonder Llama Cosplay. What's going on? We've got, it's like it went from absolutely nothing to nonstop go, 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 go. I've got some conventions coming up, got some photo workshops coming up, all manner of fun stuff. Too much to mention. You don't care about it, so let's move on.
I'm sure we do. But, Byron, if you would introduce yourself, sir.
Hello, random peoples of the internet, interwebs, internets, whatever you want to call it. I am Byron McNeil, aka Byron D0, on multiple facets of the internet. I am a contributing writer, and I do a bunch of other cool stuff like cover conventions, which I'm excited to do in the near future. I also do a little bit of art on the side, and if you want to check out some of my stuff, you should go to my Instagram. That is BD0Art. That is spelled BDZEROART. It's a good time.
I'm glad you didn't actually forget how to spell zero. Sounded like for a second there. People in the chats, welcome, Magical Zara. Hopefully you're still hanging in there, even though you were good to go a half an hour ago. Anime Loves, peep back at you. I'm assuming that's a hello of some sort.
Peep, peep.
Peep. And that's what we got so far. If you've got any questions, observations, your own favorites, anything like that, feel free to throw them into the chat. We love to respond to you people while we're doing our stuff. And
Here's some of your favorites, people.
absolutely.
Like.
Yes.
And by the way, I do want to apologize for the gratuitous use of the Care Bears in the thumbnail image. Care Bears will not be one of the choices, unless somebody's going to pull a ringer on me.
Don't apologize for the Care Bears.
Never apologize for Care Bears. So we are going to go, as we always do, alphabetical by first name. Byron, what is your third favorite 1980s cartoon series?
My third one is an oldie but a goodie. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Everybody wants to start singing Concrete Blonde songs.
But seriously though, it was classic 80s schlock. You had your children's safe action / violence that you could show on animated television. You had a hilarious villain in Skeletor who was not the least bit scary in hindsight. You had
It was the voice. It's hard to be scary when you talk like this.
Helium is fun.
I don't want to feel good. I want to feel evil. I actually met Alan Oppenheimer at Kineticon many years ago. So that's my little flex there. Sword and Sorcery, it's my jam. I still want an Orko doll to this day. Somebody needs to make that happen. I don't know who. I'll pay someone on Etsy to do it. it was filled with a lot of those traditional 80s tropes of hero stories where you had the needless use of the secret identity. Like, I remember even as a kid just thinking, like, why is he hiding it from everyone? Like, there was no legitimate reason. It's like, it was just the thing you did.
Yep.
It
And
was
you're
in
like,
the
okay.
script.
Yeah, it was
Yep.
in the script.
Um, you know, it was as 80s as 80s cartoons get for me, except for the other entries on my list.
Yeah. It was the third most 80s thing for Byron. Yeah.
So, Byron, question for you. Um, why is a character called Skeletor, who's got a fleshless skull head, why is he as ripped as He-Man? He's built like Schwarzenegger. Shouldn't he be a
Magic.
skeleton?
Magic. That's how.
Magic.
Also in
Magic.
the script.
Magic rules, Eternia. Yeah, I watched it because, it was the thing to watch back then. It was really close to the cliff edge of cheese for me, even back then.
That's what made it fun, though.
Yeah, I guess. All right, Greg, the number 3 choice.
My number 3, and this is probably going to show my age as much as talking about Hanna-Barbera did, was a show that is kind of a goofy cartoon adaptation of one of the goofiest but genuinely funniest and most influential TV shows of all time, Get Smart. So my number 3 is Inspector Gadget. Right down to the trench coat, to the hat. No idea who's out there listening at the moment. I'm not sure whether people have seen Get Smart, heard of Get Smart, but it was that early 60s, probably early to mid 60s when that was originally on. It was kind of a spoof of the James Bond international spy sort of thing. That was, it was huge at the time after the first couple of James Bond movies came out. But Don Adams, the actor who played, what's his name?
Maxwell
Smart.
Maxwell Smart. Thank you. Just had a brain fart for no reason. Plays it as a complete bumbling idiot, much like Inspector Gadget. And I love the show. I watched that with my parents when I was growing up. Get Smart, that is. And incredibly enough, Roddy made a great point when we were talking before we went on, that a show that is deliberately and unflinchingly a take on a TV show, being Inspector Gadget, they actually got Don Adams, who was the live action Maxwell Smart, to do the voice of Inspector Gadget, among a host of other, very, very well-known voice actors. Loved the show. I remember watching it all the time. I was always really taken by the ridiculous hat and all of the ridiculous stuff that came out of the ridiculous hat. I should actually pull that cosplay out of the cost closet at some point.
Please.
I did that a while ago. I actually managed to get articulated hands with the big yellow gloves on it, holding a couple of, I don't even remember what it was. They were magnetic, so I could interchange them with different stuff. Didn't quite get the world.
Dr. Claw.
Didn't quite get the helicopter. Exactly. But yeah, it's a silly show. Don't watch the Matthew Broderick movie. It was not good.
Yeah.
Not
It was
good.
so bad it was good, though.
Yes. But if you're watching our show tonight or later on YouTube, and you've ever watched Inspector Gadget and you can find it somewhere streaming, check out Get Smart. Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner, Buck Henry, some of the, obviously a lot of older writers and comedians, but some of the seminal writers, actors, producers, etc. And it's a great show, and it very clearly was the inspiration for Inspector Gadget.
Yep. Absolutely agreed on all accounts, both about Get Smart and Inspector Gadget. Inspector Gadget was one of the unabashedly fun shows aimed at a kid that you could enjoy as an adult without the current, oh, the kids aren't going to get that joke stuff.
Yes. And a lot of the jokes still hold up. Like,
Yep.
for me, it was one of the first instances of animated slapstick. Because, like, the beauty of Inspector Gadget was the physical comedy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, for somebody my age, that goes, way back to Scooby-Doo and even before that. So, but yeah, for people who were mostly watching stuff when they first started watching cartoons in the 80s, yeah, it's, it is the peak of physical cartoon comedy from that period, I think.
Also, a very catchy theme song.
Yeah,
Also.
it's been stuck in my head literally since I pulled up the IMDb page to remember who all the other voice talent was.
Yes.
Now,
That's another thing about it.
my number 3, a completely opposite end of Inspector Gadget. My number 3 is a really rare, I don't know a lot of people who know this, Defenders of the Earth.
Yes, I do remember that one.
Defenders of the Earth was a sort of superhero cartoon that featured 3 characters from the King Features Syndicate line of what was mostly at the time Sunday newspaper cartoon serials. So you had the Phantom, Flash Gordon, and Mandrake the Magician. And they went up against mostly Flash's nemesis, Ming the Merciless. Even back in the early 80s, apparently people were aware of just how incredibly racist the depiction of Ming was in the early serials in the comics.
Yep.
So they made him an alien, like an alien. He's got, as you can see here, green skin and pointed Vulcan ears and so on. So that was a nice touch. But the thing that got me, and I didn't realize until I went back and I started looking at some of the information about this. So Defenders of the Earth was created by, or the production company was King Features Entertainment, which means that they licensed it, but it was a Marvel Productions. This was made by Marvel's TV cartoon line back then.
Yes.
And you can tell by the nature of the writers, the stories, how it deals with very interesting, sort of comic book plot lines, comic book villain plot lines, and so on. Just really surprisingly well done for a cartoon at the time. So yeah, if you get a chance to see it, apparently it is being shown on Tubi and Pluto.
Really? I randomly found an episode on YouTube a while back.
You probably can do that as well.
You forgot one member of the team though.
Lothor.
Mandrake's assistant Lothor.
So Lothor is one of the best African American sidekicks, except Lothor is pretty much a full team member on his own.
Yes.
Even though he is Mandrake's assistant, he is the sort of down-to-earth, realistic, he's a mechanic, an engineering genius, a tactician, and so on. And they played that up really well. In the comics, he is a vital, or the comic strips, he is a vital assistant to Mandrake, who is always helping. In the cartoon, he's a lot more like a fourth member of the primary team.
Yes.
And I say primary team because the team also includes, like, all of their kids. So,
or their wards.
Or their wards, that's true. Mandrake has a ward named Kashin, who is an alien. Was found on Ming's planet.
Yes. Also, another good theme song, too.
You know what? I do not remember the theme song at all.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
I just remember Mandrake's part. He's like, master of magic, spells, and delusions.
Which he was. Yeah.
So I gotta say, since you brought up Flash Gordon and Ming the Merciless, for me, there can only ever be one Ming the Merciless, and that's Max von Sydow.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't disagree. I think, first off, anything Max von Sydow does is perfect.
At above.
And despite still tying deeply into the racist stereotypes, even in that movie, he was outstanding.
He didn't really lean into that. There was no fake accent. There was no.
No, that's true.
Orientalism necessarily. Yes. It's funny if you'd said I was going to say the Flash Gordon movie came out in 1980, and it is basically a cartoon, so I probably could have picked that.
Which has me excited for the Taika Waititi project that's just been announced.
Which one is that?
Well, it was originally going to be an animated film, but now there's talks about turning it live action.
On what property?
Flash Gordon.
I don't remember hearing about that.
I thought we talked about that a while ago. I mean, Taika Waititi's got a lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah, we might have, and I might have, misremembered it. Already, even tomorrow's Nerd Week Live is just so already packed with topics. It's pretty easy.
All I'm asking is that they cast Timothy Dalton as Ming the Merciless this time.
Interesting. But let's move on to our number twos. Byron, what's your number two?
Yes. Number two. Let me pull it up real quick because I have the memory of a goldfish. Oh, yes. Muppet Babies. The 80s was definitely a time of cash grabs in children's programming. And you had like a kid version of almost everything. You had Yo Yogi, you had what's the other one? Flintstones Kids. But of course, the only one that really had any kind of heart to it that had like the original creator's blessing, Muppet Babies, because it was originally a one-off music number from the Muppets Take Manhattan, where you had Piggy.
Right.
Yes, where you had Piggy like visualizing what life would have been like if they had grown up together. And it was such a popular and memorable scene. It was such a popular and memorable scene that Kingsbow took the idea and ran with it, and Jim Henson was totally okay with this. And it continued to have that same energy from that one number with like the doo-wop music numbers, and just taking the idea of Piggy's imagination and making this entire narrative around the power of imagination and play, which was at the heart of everything that Jim Henson ever created. Like, the man was a true auteur, and the fact that he was okay with this says a lot about the heart of this product, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess that Muppet Babies is the only infantilized version of any IP that I liked. Any of the ones that came after that, the Looney Tunes and others were just, in my mind, terrible.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't like the Disney Babies toys?
Nope, none of them.
I mean, thank God that was never turned into a show.
In that case, I don't even remember them.
I would know
vaguely remember Muppet Babies. I do remember that was pretty mercilessly cute.
Yes. They definitely took some liberties with it, like giving Scooter a sister because there weren't many girls in the Muppets cast at that time.
Yeah.
Also making Gonzo attracted to Piggy for some reason, even though that was never a thing in the original canon. It's like, okay, I never questioned it. Maybe he just grew out of the crush.
Or maybe he just, hadn't realized that he loves chickens.
Yes. Also, some top tier voice acting talent, because you had Frank Welker doing the voice of Baby Kermit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome. And that's range, kids. That's range.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's why
that was before auto tuning.
Oh yes.
All right, Greg, number two.
Number two, it was a little bit of a stretch to come up with a couple of these. I had to really kind of rack my brains for stuff that I enjoyed watching. This was a little bit later in the 80s, and I don't know, would you call this infantilizing, kind of along what you were just talking about? Because there are, basically three micro Donald Ducks, if you will, after a fashion.
Aha,
But
classic.
Disney's DuckTales. I loved Scrooge McDuck. That was probably right about the time I started reading Tolkien, so anything English kind of grabbed my attention, and Scotland is close enough to England that I probably didn't know any better at the time. Although, God forbid you should say that to an actual Scottish person now. You probably get walloped. But yeah, I loved the different adventure every week. We're going to the desert this week. We're going to the Himalayas next week. I mean, who didn't love swimming through piles and piles of gold doubloons in Scrooge
Right.
McDuck's vault? And it was just an all-around cute, fun cast of characters. Again, similar, a lot of really great, well-known voice actors: Tress MacNeille, Frank Welker.
Tony Anselmo as Donald.
Yeah, we were talking about this before we went live. The rabbit hole you go down when you look at IMDb and you say, oh, that was the guy that played that. So Peter Cullen, one of the voice actors in DuckTales, I'm like, that name looks familiar. Where do I know him from? Oh, Optimus Prime, of course. He did the voice of Optimus Prime for all of the the live action. It was the live action ones. So that probably doesn't count. But yeah, it's a fun show. Sorry?
Who do you voice in DuckTales?
Who's he in DuckTales? Hang on, my browser is super slow right now. Admiral Grimmets. I don't really remember per se, but again, it's just that sort of rabbit hole of looking at actors and diving headlong into who's doing what.
If he had voiced Flintheart Glomgold, I would have been so impressed.
Now, I have not actually watched the new version of DuckTales that came out last year.
It holds up.
Year before, whatever that was.
It has the same spirit. If you ever get a chance, the series is done, so you got all the time in the world.
Okay. And folks who in the audience, go to nerdcaliber.com, do a search for DuckTales. Byron's review of the new series of the reboot is up there, and a very favorable review. I think Huey, Louie, and Dewey predates this cartoon, so I don't think they were infantilized.
They do. That's fair.
Yeah. So, just to make that point. Yeah, this was good. It was fun. Fun adventure that didn't necessarily play down to the kids, but also didn't, go full Japanese anime, let's watch people die kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, cut from a similar cloth as like Johnny Quest and stuff like that, where it was just, a weird ragtag bunch of people that know each other somehow, and they go on an adventure and solve mysteries and fight bad guys.
But with a lot more jokes.
Also, I gotta get props to the movie as well, because while the series never got a proper finale, DuckTales, the movie The Treasure of the Lost Lamp, would probably be one of the better concepts for a final for sticking a pin in that narrative.
Yep. All right, my number two, the original Voltron.
Yes.
So Voltron, both the recent reboot and the original are technically based on a Japanese anime called Beast King Go Lion.
Which isn't very good.
Hmm?
It isn't very good, by the way.
Beast King Go Lion or the new version?
Yeah. Beast King Go Lion.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I've only seen the Americanization of it. I liked it because it was at that point the closest thing to Star Blazers, which was the Americanization of Space Battleship Yamato, that I had seen. And while it did more to sort of tone down the more sort of shocking and serious elements that, even anime geared towards kids in Japan will always have, character deaths and mentions of torture and violence and possibly even sexual assault. Um, while all of that has been kind of stripped out, it still was a more serious story than almost anything you would get in American animation in the 1980s. Um, and you got a bunch of mechanical piloted lions that can turn into a giant robot.
What could go wrong with that?
And it was inspired by, or inspired one of my favorite MC Frontalot songs, "I'll Form the Head." Go check that out, folks. If we didn't get a copyright strike, I'd be playing it right now.
I will say though that in subsequent watches, the amount of complexity that was put into like even the Americanization of the show was pretty brilliant. Like,
oh yeah,
you had like this almost Shakespearean rivalry between Luthor and his father Zarkon, and how like he would like how he put up this front where he wanted the throne, and he would even go as far as to feed him snake poison. Yep. And you're kind of just like, oh my god, it's like he actually tried to do it. Like, it didn't work. It made him stronger, but it was just the fact that you had a cartoon villain that was that dead set on getting what he wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the better things about it, and that is one of the traits of, again, Japanese animation typically over American animation, is you have much more complex villains. And that's absolutely the case for this. This was done by Toei Animation, which you can tell is one of their many outstanding pieces of work, and originally licensed to NBC Universal Television. I didn't realize that.
Really?
So yeah, I really liked this series. I did not like nearly as much the reboot, although I do like the fact that they toned down a little bit of the Americanization. Like in the original Voltron, Shiro is named Sven for some reason. So yeah. But all the rest of the characters are have the same English names as the original.
I mean, it could have been worse. You could have gotten the CGI show or that Nickelodeon thing.
Yeah, there have been some pretty terrible adaptations. And even the American one, like the last season was based on a completely different series that was sort of a mecha anime.
Yes. Car robots.
Armored Fleet Dyrigger 15. So, yeah, so there are definitely problems with the original, but even that, in my mind, is better than the reboot.
Fair enough.
All right. Before we get to our number ones, folks, honorable mention time. Byron, hit us up.
Oh yes, my honorable mention is one that I don't hear getting a lot of love these days. Kid Video. Now, you want to talk about quintessential 80s animation. This was a Saturday morning cartoon series that was geared to cash in on the MTV generation. You had it was an isekai before the term was ever coined or brought to the West.
Yeah,
where you had this 80s rock band with the name Kid Video, named after the lead singer Kid Video, and they're captured by this bad dude named Master Blaster, who's a corporate raider type. He warps them into his world called the Flip Side, and now they're trying to find their way back home and at the same time stop Master Blaster from whatever his evil plan is of the week. The songs are pretty, and it would always end with a music video by the band Kid Video. Because they were the voice actors.
Corporate synergy before that was a thing.
Exactly. And this fun fact, it was one of Saban's first Western properties, and
Wow.
they went, and because of Haim Saban being of Israeli descent, he was able to market the band in Israel for the longest time. They had multiple records, they had all this cool stuff, but they never took off from the Kid Video never took off in the West, which is a shame because if you ever get a chance, I highly recommend just listening to the full theme song. It's
I'll,
really good.
I'll have to. I know I've seen at least 1 or 2 episodes of this. I don't remember anything about it other than the fact that I've seen it. Um, and I think it's kind of amazing when you think about the idea that, all right, let's mix the monkeys with the Phantom Toll Booth and
Exactly.
money. You know,
Money.
money rolling in. All right, Greg, hit us up. Honorable mention.
My honorable mention, I didn't realize it when I was thinking through these, but apparently I've got a bit of a soft spot for TV shows that spoof James Bond movies. So my number 3 was Inspector Gadget, which was a spoof of James Bond. And my number 2 was sort of the same thing with a little more British sensibility and a lot less
A lot more British
helicopter
sensibility.
Yes,
stuff
way more.
flying out of your head. Was a fairly well, how long did it run? 6 or 7 seasons, I think.
Oh yeah, no, it ran a long time.
Not super well known necessarily, but one of my all-time favorites, Danger Mouse. Very British sensibility, very dry wit, especially compared to.
He got a second win on
Inspector
Nickelodeon,
Gadget.
actually.
Yes,
Yep.
the reboot. I watched a few episodes of that, and I did enjoy that one. They did that fairly well. But yeah, I mean, this is an even more self-conscious spoof of James Bond, right down to M and Q analogs.
Colonel K or Commander K or something like
Colonel K as what do you call it? As basically Q. Or M, I never remember which one's which.
The main baddie.
I think he was M.
Yes.
The main baddie, Baron Greenback, was definitely a callback to Blofeld, the leader of Spectre.
Right, for sure. It's just it was cute. There's nothing super memorable about it. I can't say any one episode stands out per se, but cool cars, fun mouse tech, as it were. It was just a good, fun 80s cartoon. I always liked watching it.
You know, looking at this image that I just popped up there, which is him in the car, I just realized now why I really liked the Lotus Esprit back in the 1980s. Because it's his car. It's like...
So did that happen before Live and Let Die?
I think the Lotus Esprit is the car in Live and Let Die.
It is.
Yeah.
No. Well, sorry.
The series. No, Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die was 1973.
Right.
Danger Mouse started in 81, so it was clearly well after that.
All right.
Yeah, that was. There you go. We could do an entire No Nerd Caliber on classic cars from pop culture.
Ooh, that would be a.
That's
fun
actually
one.
an interesting.
Except that it'd have to be top 5, and everyone gets 30 seconds per.
Right.
Because it'd be a 2-hour show.
I think mine would be, it'd be, all of them would be the Hearstmobile from the Munsters.
From the Munsters.
Yep.
Fair.
I
gotta go with Fred Flintstone's car.
Yeah. All right. So my honorable mention has already been mentioned. My honorable mention is Inspector Gadget, and I had to pick a different image, so this is of him with Penny. And for essentially all the reasons that Greg said, I was a huge Get Smart fan as a live action show, not just because of Agent 99, but boy, that was a big part of it. And I just love that Don Adams did this spoof on his own show, and it was funny. It was, again, definitely geared towards kids, but without playing down to them too much. And the gadgets were insane. It's just really wild, fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks. Numero unos. Byron, hit us up.
Yes. Well, I gotta go out with a bang because this See, this is I'm just gonna say name the name. It's Transformers. Easily the greatest robot anime slash Western IP of all time. It's one of it's one of the most enduring IPs from the late 20th century. It takes a silly concept like robots that transform into vehicles and manage to make it epic. Like they built an entire lore around it, and anything I could say to describe the narrative, to describe these characters, I wouldn't do it justice. All you need to know is that two of the greatest voice actors of all time play two of the greatest characters of all time. You got Optimus Prime, who is the stalwart, heroic hero paragon leader of the Autobots, who's fighting not only for his people but for the people of Earth, because he's all about freedom that much. He is essentially a robot Captain America. And then you have Megatron, who is, while he is part sniveling, conniving robot villain, but also a brilliant tactician soldier who is not to be trifled with. Like, he is shown time and time again through this series that why he is in charge. And it's not just because he's a bad dude, it's because he will F you up.
So I got to say, I was old enough when this premiered to be initially really ticked off that it was happening, because it only happened because of Reagan's policy of stopping the restriction on allowing, TV shows or any sort of cartoons to literally pander to children, to create shows to sell product. You couldn't do it before Reagan, and in early 83, I think or 82, he changed that. And they wrote the absolute living bejesus out of this. They took a bunch of toys and created an insanely deep universe that not even Michael Bay could destroy.
Right.
He tried hard.
He tried hard.
Yes, he did. Jesus Christ.
No, not Days of Our Lives. Why am I blanking on the name of that? So specifically for things like Transformers, and because it encompasses so many of the corporate synergy of Hasbro, etc., that did TV shows to sell toys and toys to sell TV shows. Why am I blanking on the name of it? It was a Netflix series. They did like 3 seasons. Each episode looked at an individual toy.
The toys that
the toys that made us.
Something like that. Yeah.
Try and find it real quick.
They talked about
the toys that made us. Exactly. The one on Transformers was fascinating. Just really getting into the how they came up with the toys and how they use the TV show to sell it. Rodney, I mean, I do agree with you. It was fairly, that was kind of a turning point, and the lot of those shows, while they certainly hold a place in a lot of our nostalgia space. They were cheaply made, not super well written. I mean, it was all about every week you got to introduce a new character so that the new toy will sell off the shelves. So that part wasn't great, but yeah, I mean, for all that, who didn't love a truck that turned into a robot? I mean,
I will say though that, like, if I can go off topic for just a second, the toys that made us also talked about my number 3, He-Man, how Lee Schreiber fought tooth and nail to make that show as little of a toy commercial as possible. Like, you compare it to like the Masters of the Universe 2003 series, where they had He-Man dressed up in an ice costume because reasons.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh God, I can't pronounce your name, and I don't recognize the emoji. So, Mhad, welcome to the show, and whatever your emoji says, sure. Anyway, so Greg, numero uno.
So I think I just kind of flirted with the 80s thing here. It technically made it under the wire, but the argument could be made that this was more of a quintessentially 90s TV show or a cartoon series. But it definitely debuted in the 80s. It had a very 80s sensibility for the first couple of seasons. And a show about 80s animated series kind of wouldn't be complete without the single longest running, I don't know, is it taking over all like the Gunsmoke, et cetera, all the other shows that ran the longest number of episodes ever. Of course, I'm talking about The Simpsons. I remember, my sister and I would watch the Tracy Ullman show when The Simpsons were just these little 1-minute bumpers, between a skit and a commercial. That really, Tracy Ullman gave Matt Groening and company their start. If it wasn't for that show, who knows whether it ever would have been made. There you go, Rodney. Leave it to you to find the absolute perfect, absolute perfect image. So clearly, very for anybody who's watched The Simpsons back in the Jurassic period, as it were,
I do remember
the family
that,
on the left, very crudely drawn, very much more Neanderthal looking or Cro-Magnon looking compared to the more, I was going to say sophisticated, but I'll put that in air quotes, look that they have today, and all through the run. This was the biggest show, animated or otherwise, through the early to mid 90s. Did The Simpsons kind of patent the whole concept of catchphrase TV episodes? The whole "leave my shorts," "cow don't have a cow," "cowabunga." That stuff was everywhere.
Yes.
I was a huge fan through most of sort of the classic 8, 9, 10 seasons that the original writers were on. Conan O'Brien wrote a lot of the absolutely most iconic episodes of that whole run.
Monorail. Oh, yep. the musical
Genuine
numbers.
Certified Monorail.
The musical numbers. See My Vest.
Musical numbers were great. See My Vest was an all-time classic, of course. Yeah. And who could forget Homerisms like beer, the cause of and solution to all my problems.
You're here.
So yeah, again, I like I said, I definitely kind of right on the edge of 80s, but it did debut in early 1989, or I think the first couple of ones were on Tracy Ullman in 88. Also worth watching if you can catch any of those early shows.
But Greg, I'm disappointed that you forgot this one piece of Simpsons Americana, the Bartman.
The Bartman.
Everybody in the house do the Bartman.
And then, of course, their literal parodying of Happy Days Jump the Shark moment with Poochie.
Yes.
Where they literally were like, let's make fun of that whole corporate synergy so far over the top that the entire show jumps the proverbial shark.
And then
that episode is genius.
But then they actually did it for real with the
Yes.
Seymour Skinner episode.
Yes.
I love that. It's like, you don't really know what paradigm means, do you? You're just saying it to sound smart. I'm fired, aren't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it goes without saying that, holy crap, the writers of this show were the Nostradamuses of their time. The sheer number of gags, setups, etc., that they wrote, they threw in, that came to pass in real life. Most notably, the orange person we don't really talk about here very much. A couple of different episodes, basically, like forecasting.
Yeah.
Anyway, very clairvoyant in their own way.
Excellent series. For almost its entire run, just so many quotable lines, including some that we can't say here, which is really amazing that they got away with some of that stuff. They slid so many things by the censors at Fox. It's shocking. All right, my number one. I just kind of realized after criticizing Hasbro, at least for the concert, or the Reagan administration, I guess, criticizing them for the concept of making cartoons to sell stuff. This is a cartoon to sell stuff. It's to sell what was then the TSR role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons.
Ah, yes.
Dungeons and Dragons was a 3-season cartoon in the mid 80s that basically was, as Byron has referenced, an isekai, an anime term which means other world or another world. Bunch of teenagers or preteens, actually. The youngest one is 8 and the oldest is 15. Kids who wind up going on a Dungeons and Dragons themed carnival ride that transports them into another world, where they are. And by the way, this image that's up here is from the DVD box cover. The original artwork didn't look this good, and I couldn't find anything that was higher resolution than 480p, because it was a cartoon from back then. So they all are given traditional D&D character archetype roles, and they meet a guy who's sort of in charge of this world, or at least part of it, the Dungeon Master, who is enlisting their help to, do a bunch of things, but also is going to try to help them get back to their world. And it had some of the most complex character writing of any cartoon not done in Japan. And I just realized why, because I didn't, I enjoyed this back then, but I didn't go look at any of the information about this until bringing this information up. This was created by, and much of it was written by, Mark Evanier. I have no idea how to pronounce his last name. Long time television and comic book writer at Marvel.
Oh, no.
It's a Marvel production. And actually, this goes back to my other two. It's a Marvel production, and it was animated by Toei Animation. Doing an excellent job of making it look like a pretty traditional Western animated series. But some of the writers, they had Paul Dini. That Paul Dini wrote a bunch of episodes. One of the towering DC Batman, but all sorts of other stuff, writers, including one of the early writers on Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond. Paul Dini is just a talent in the comic book world.
Absolutely.
And this, it's too bad our good friend Ben isn't on here, because Steve Gerber wrote a couple of episodes. Back then, he was also a Marvel writer. The creator of Howard the Duck, and the Man-Thing, which, Howard the Duck came from as a comic series, not like came from. Steve Gerber is another one who Steve Gerber created, or didn't create, he reintroduced what was a one appearance back in the 60s group called the Guardians of the Galaxy into an ongoing regular series. So Steve Gerber essentially created the Guardians of the Galaxy in the form that we knew it in the 70s. It's just massive writing, television, regular television. Evanier wrote for the Bob Newhart show. So,
wow.
Yeah, he wrote for so many things, but also comic books and so on. And once I realized that, now it makes sense that every one of these kids has their own cross to bear problem that affects the storylines. They all have the Peter Parker syndrome. It may not be specifically Parker and what he's going through, but they're all going through stuff. Even to the point where in one of the later episodes, they have the barbarian, Bobby, who's the little kid, with the club and the barbarian horned helmet, having a breakdown because he misses his parents and his friends. Which an 8-year-old stuck in this sort of stuff probably would do.
Yeah. A kid like that would have fun for a while, but sooner or later, they're gonna miss PB&Js. They're gonna miss the video games. They're gonna miss all that stuff.
Yep. Although I'm not sure about video games back in 1983 or 5 or whatever. Missed the Pong. But it was just really smart stuff. And
Rodney,
yeah,
you have to bring up the final episode,
which never aired. So they wrote a final episode for this that would have been kind of a nice, as Byron had put it for something else, a nice pin in the end of it, with the possibility that they could have gone on for more. It answered one of the really big mysteries that is teased, or not teased, I mean, actually says it, but they don't confirm it, that the Dungeon Master is the father of the big evil in this world, Venger. He sort of offhandedly calls Venger his son in the penultimate episode, and the series was canceled by then. So they never got to do the final episode, which confirms that, which sets up an amazing power dynamic if they were going to go into a 4th season. And it just never got finished because the show had been canceled. There was no reason to do it.
But you can go onto YouTube and find it.
You can find a voice reading of it with some animation stuff put over it. Yeah. So it has been sort of produced in a I guess more like a teleplay version.
A fan animation, actually. Like, it was fully animated.
Right.
Now.
But that's over the actual voice reading, which did happen at some point, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And the only member of the original cast that they got that came back was Katsusi.
Right.
Who is one of the OGs of 80s voice acting.
Yeah. And this didn't have as many of them. This actually went the other way and picked 80s television stars to do a lot of the voice acting. So Willie Ames is one of the voice actors. Adam Rich. So yeah, it's a really good series, folks. I really recommend it. Again, probably the closest thing to a Japanese isekai anime that has ever been produced on Western shores. So I would say go get it if you get a chance. That's it, folks. That is our show. Thank you all for joining us in the chats. Thank you all for tuning in and watching. Tomorrow night, Nerd Week Live. As I said, we've already got a whole bunch of stuff that's already dropped. We're going to have a pretty deep roster. Talking about all kinds of new news. If you didn't see it today, folks, an actual date and the very first image from the upcoming, they're calling it Lord of the Rings, the Amazon live action series that actually is set in the Second Age. So I guess more Middle Earth, but even then it's not really Middle Earth because the image that they show isn't of Middle Earth at all. But anyway.
It's definitely not the Second Age.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually got to be a flashback, given what's in the background. But anyway, and then there's a ton more stuff that's tomorrow night. Nerd Week Live, 8 p.m. right here. Thursday, this coming Thursday's Full Fat Spoiler Chat, and the reason we're doing this 80s show is the reboot of Masters of the Universe that's on Netflix right now, Masters of the Universe Revelations.
It's not really a reboot, though.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. The sequel. It is literally a sequel to the original series. It takes place right after the end of the original series. So, yeah, thank you for correcting that. Created by and mostly written by Kevin Smith, with amazing voice talent. Mark Hamill as Skeletor, finally an actual evil-sounding, scary Skeletor. Lena Headey as Evil Lynn. Sarah Michelle Gellar as Tila. The Onion Knight, Liam Cunningham as Man at Arms.
Jason Mewes as Stinkor.
Yes. and Henry Rollins as Triclops.
Oh God, yes, I loved him as that.
Henry Rollins as anything.
Henry Rollins as anything, but Henry Rollins as Triclops is fire. Anyway, 8 o'clock Thursday, be here. We'll be talking about it. The show's called Spoiler Chat, folks, so we'll be spoiling the heck out of it. If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. You can binge it. It's 8 episodes?
5 episodes.
5?
Episodes.
Okay.
Yep.
It's 5 episodes.
So you can have the power.
Exactly. You can. Maybe. And then next week, this show will be Anime Octane, and I don't believe we've set the topic yet. So stay tuned. We'll be telling you what show that is going to be about. Before you go, if you get a chance, go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/nerdcaliber. Check out our two tiers, both pretty low dollar. Cons are coming back. We would love to have your help in getting us to more cons, cover more cons, get more videos for you here on the YouTubes. And we'll see you at some cons coming up. Like actually really in like a month or maybe... Oh, and Free Comic Book Day.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Free Comic Book Day, folks. People will be various places. I believe I'll be at Double Midnight up in Manchester.
That's right.
New Hampshire.
That is the same date. I will be at MegaCon in Florida.
If you're going to be down there, folks, we have audience from everywhere. Check out Greg. Also, Manny Rude will be our photographer or a videographer down at MegaCon. So he'll be going around doing the question of the day and interviews and so on. So check both of them out. You'll be able to find Greg at the cosplay registration.
Yeah, we'll be shooting with the cosplay contest, the Masters of Cosplay that Fan Expo does. It's one of their qualifier rounds. And I've worked MegaCon 3 years, I think. It's a fantastic show. The event space is great. The level of competition in the costume contest is astounding.
Yep.
Some truly level cosplay.
Yeah. Even before Fan Expo bought it, MegaCon was a cosplay mecca. And once they bought it and incorporated it into their larger, multi-con Masters of Cosplay series, it just went up. So if you're in the Florida area and you like cosplay, or all of the amazing guests, etc., MegaCon Orlando. And that's it, folks. We will see you at an upcoming show. Byron, give us a goodbye.
Hey guys, Byron McNeil, aka Byron D0. I will see you guys tomorrow night if the fates allow.
If the fates allow. Greg.
Night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the replay on YouTube if you're catching it not right at the moment. Like I said, I'll be in Orlando for MegaCon in 2 weeks. And looking forward to seeing all of these lovely people, or several of these lovely people, in New York in October for New York Comic Con when that comes up. And probably in a show in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a fun announcement for Red Raven Studios. That I will pimp out live on air.
Pimp that studio. We can't say pimp that ride because it's not a ride. Anyway, thank you, folks. We'll see you later. Have a good night. Stay safe, please.